Hello, and our weekend debate in bite size this time, and we're doing it around the different constituencies. So, Ayre and Michael, I'll just read out who is there. We've got Tim Baker. Dr. Seuss is how I pronounce it. Do you want to go for the full name? I think you were very good at this.
Dr. Seuss, no, I've lost it.
Okay, Dr. Seuss, you want to go?
I struggle enough with Manx names. Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I
think to do the man.
You wrote it down.
Yes. Seuss Basugu is, Basugu. I think, Dr. Seuss Basugu. I hope that's. My apologies to him.
And mine as well, because it's tricky. Alf Cannon, Phil Corkill, Tim Johnson, Duncan Livingston, Paul Wetherall, and Madeline Westall. So there we go. We got the 8 generating there for the 2 seats as everywhere else. Let's just go in order here. Tim Baker. Do you want to be cruel, kind? I mean, does it matter what's going on here in Douglas to what's going on up there in Michael, I suppose, is one of the biggest questions.
I think Tim took on too much. I think there were too many important jobs, and Tim tried to serve, but it was just literally too much. And I think the result of that was that he became too reliant on officers. I think that's so. You were in charge of the meat plant, the MUA, and DOI ultimately, and you couldn't possibly cope with all 3 jobs and do them effectively and have your finger absolutely on the pulse of everything. As a consequence, I think he relied too much on his officers and was led by them. I think I better leave it there.
Just on that, though, briefly, sorry, this is me putting it as a journalist, but it just intrigues me because you'll have a better understanding of this. With what we had with the Keys last time, do you think that to me, there's 2 ways that situation comes about. Either backbenchers not wanting to work in government, or government shut the doors and said, this is our team, that's you lot. Do you reckon that could have been why he ended up with so many jobs, because government wasn't working with backbenchers, or backbenchers weren't working more with government?
I don't see any situation where any other members have taken so many jobs on. So I'm not sure I'd agree with that. I mean, I think it comes to something when backbenchers prefer to be on the backbenches, knowing full well that they're getting significantly less. There's good reason why they choose scrutiny roles rather than executive roles. So, no.
Just on that, I thought, on the hustings I went to, I thought he spoke very well. I think at times he's defending the almost indefensible. The DOI is far too big. Everybody knows that. It shouldn't be running buses, railways, and major contracts.
But was it local issues particularly interesting at the hustings, or was it national?
That was the thing. It was the prom got sort of mentioned as a dig by one of the other candidates, but from a local point of view, the first question of the night was buses, which,
I'm hearing that as well. It's up there is definitely that they've lost buses, and they think the south have gained them, or the west have gained them, or something. There's something they're not happy about in that sense.
Well, as Mr. Baker said, and he's right. He's been in the job 18 months, 2 years to DOI. We've had a global pandemic, and it wasn't him who put these in place. It also wasn't him who bought minibuses, which we now have to use. People, I think there's an element there of civil servants not doing, or maybe overstepping what they should.
Yeah, well, maybe we don't want to. But we'll see. But, he's been. Some might say a yes man in Tim. He was very pro-government all the way through, and then he got the ministerialship. Do we want to proceed any further down that one, or should we move on?
I think move on.
Yeah. Dr. Seuss, he hasn't done an interview with me, so I've tried to get him, but I don't know nothing at all. Will you?
I thought on the night he spoke very well. I thought he really insightful in terms of he's somebody who looks at things with an almost mathematical brain. I think he looks at things, we have a problem, we need to know what that problem is before we immediately go, we have a solution, now let's work out the middle bit. He seems to go, what is the problem, and then how can we fix it, and then what result will we get from that, as opposed to what I think we've seen a few times as government is, we have a problem, let's jump to this solution, and then work it together, as you see with Laxey sewage, and that was a solution, but they went, that this is going to solve it, and they didn't work out how to get there. And I think he's somebody who would bring to Keys perhaps a different style of things of how to look at situations. I also thought what was great with him was he said about his hero in life, and he immediately said Princess Diana, which I thought was interesting because he said it was somebody who wanted to serve people, which I thought was quite an interesting. It was it was an amusing sort of little anecdote on the night, but it was quite, when you look back on him, he's quite somebody who clearly wants to do something good for Ireland, which he has ultimately moved to and made his home. I think.
I wish I'd talked to him. It's sad I haven't got everyone coming forward to interviews, but
you asked him though, didn't you?
Yeah, I've asked everybody. Some people just don't want to do interviews. I mean, not everyone's done everyone, and some people have missed, I think, everything. Well, not everything, but the media is these days, there's too much. Maybe that's not a story. Okay, we can come to Alf Cannon. You are very pro Alf, I think I'm right in saying.
Well, I voted for Alf as Chief Minister last time. If I was standing again, which of course I'm not, I would most certainly be voting for Alf. I think he's matured hugely in this particular House in a very challenging role, and done it with a great deal of careful thought, and has put very few made very few mistakes. I think he's ready. I really do, because this next House is going to be demanding and challenging in a whole new.
I mean, he really wants it. I mean, he wanted it last time, obviously, but he seems to really want to have this job. I mean, if he didn't get it for any reason, I mean, yeah, it's up to the new members. Would he be happy in Treasury again, or if he got in, of course?
Well, that's not for me to. That's something you have to ask Alf about.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
What do you think, Alf?
I think on the night, just on a weird anecdote, which you can see on our videos on Jeff, just for a little plug there. There was a really weird positioning of my camera on that night. So every time Alf Cannon stood up, he was overshadowed by Captain Hook, because they had a fairy tale villains thing in the school.
Oh, in the background?
And behind is just Captain Hook every time over Alf like that. And it's a really weird visual, which I only noticed when I was going through the videos and trying to edit them. I was like, there's nothing I can do with this. But no, I thought on the night he was very good. I thought he spoke with an authority, and I don't really want to say, but almost like a chief minister. He had that sort of that air about him of a little bit.
Isn't it his army background though? It has that thing like, come on troops, over we go. And
well, no, I think you've got to consider Alf in the whole, because in his first 5 years he was very much erring towards the vibrant rebel type of operation, which you would expect. But then he didn't get chief minister. He did an excellent job as treasury minister, and I think what you need to note about Alf is that when it came to putting the Treasury team together, he chose one from the right, one from the left, and one from the centre. In other words, he was listening to a broad church as Treasury Minister. And I would expect he would do the same again as Chief Minister, which is an indication of a man who will truly listen to everyone around him before making the key decisions as Chief Minister.
Yeah.
I suppose if we wanted to counter it a little bit, there's been elements with the business support over the past year where perhaps Treasury has been slow to listen to business. And I think that came about. It's come up in a couple of meetings that I've been at where business support has not necessarily been right. Also, there's issues around school meal vouchers and what support children get in the holidays, which has been bounced back at Treasury. So I think there's sort of been an element of where, just if, I suppose for being a little more balanced, then Treasury has done a good job, and particularly in the past year. But I think there's still been blind spots which have been in every Treasury department for the past 10 years, and I think that's have evaded this one as well.
Okay. Phil Corkle, a builder, self-employed builder. I don't know. Oh, he's done an interview, but I mean, again, we're probably relying on you for
he was
seeing him in action.
Fantastically funny. Fantastically funny. It stood up. I think his opening comment was, "Why am I staying for MHK? Because I can't do any worse job than these two." And it was sort of like one of these, and that was his start.
He said that.
And then there was another comment I believe he made the other night when he was asked who he wants to be chief minister, and he said, "Dr. Allenson see me naked, so I better vote for him." And it's sort of, I think there's a humour to him which I think is quite good, but then there's a seriousness which comes behind that, where he has thought out his answers. So I think he's a very approachable sort of person, and it'll be interesting to see how he does, because I think it's a completely sort of almost unique. He's a unique candidate in a lot of. I don't think we've got anybody like him in any other area, to be honest, who is quite so openly charismatic and also quite has thought about things in his manner.
Gosh.
So someone interesting. We need interesting characters. I think you always said that. One or two.
I think it's important to recognise that you do need a number of characters in Keys. I thought. I mean, historically, having started in Keys some significant time ago, there were strong characters that made a play in the political arena. And I thought in the last House we became very calm and almost vanilla for a while until the 12 new members, as it were, got traction, and then things began, characterizations began to emerge. I hope this time that we don't go through, see another 2 or 3 years where a lot of new members are trying to find their feet. It would be helpful if you had experienced characters coming in and express themselves early doors.
So many first-timers, aren't there? Let's face it, lots of first-timers. Moving to Tim Johnson, a farming background, obviously. It's a farming area, right? It's got to be big on areas like that, isn't it, Sam?
Well, I don't know. I suppose you have to question, to one instance, whether the farming community is as big as it was on the island, and whether it carries as much weight in terms of that. But obviously, being president of the Farmers' Union, I think, was the current chief minister at one point in that role, or was he secretary or president? He was one of the top roles in the union.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
So you've got areas like, so obviously it is a path, and obviously we've had many farming connections in MHK. I think he was on the night. I don't know. His answers were very good. He was just very quiet to me. I don't know. Assuming sort of active prejudice in my own sort of right of assuming a farmer to be quite boisterous and loud, and he really wasn't. He was quite quiet, but when you listen to his answers, they were quite well thought out again. And it's another one of these areas where you have got very strong candidates, and he was one of them.
Because farming used to be a massive thing, isn't it? Getting into the house was almost where you did it.
If you look right back, there used to be a lot of advocates and a lot of farmers.
Yes.
Those days have gone.
Okay, we've got driving instructor Duncan Livingston.
To be honest, it's another one. He's a very good candidate. He spoke well in the night. He's gone down an interesting route with not publishing a manifesto, I believe. I think he's done everything online. He says he wasn't doing it to save paper. I mean, I think that potentially could hinder an election on the island. I mean, I know we were talking about electronic voting not too long ago, but I think people still like something they can sit and read or hold in their hand, or people to come to their door. And
people of a certain age do, definitely. And those aren't on the internet.
And let's be honest, I think they're probably more on the internet than they were 2 years ago.
Yes.
They're more on Facebook especially. But I think that the bigger thing is they're people who want something in front of them. And let's be honest, the voting population of the island tends to be middle-aged to older. I'd love to see more young people come out and vote, and maybe he could be somebody who could drive that online. But I think it's an interesting strategy, and I'll be very interested to see how this plays out. Because I think hearing him speak is very good. I just wonder what not presenting a manifesto to people will do for that.
So in certain quarters, it might be considered a discourtesy. We'll see. Well, how old is he?
Oh, I wouldn't know.
I don't know. Do they tell you on these things? I'm not sure. Is age a big issue anymore? I don't know if people do say their ages. Not on this one I'm looking at.
We've done an ours, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
Oh, right. I'm just looking at one there. Let's move to Livan, Paul Wetherell. Now, here we go. There's 3 people. Am I right? There's 3.
Well, I mean,
not understanding.
I've always made my position clear about party politics in the Isle of Man. 24 members is just too small to make party politics work well. And as I could witter on about that for an hour to 2 hours, I better stop there, I think. But
everyone's on the same messages. I don't know about you. Everyone I've interviewed, they've all said sustainable housing, potholes. I think almost everyone has the same sort of agenda these days. They don't really stand out very much.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about, why it is that they're standing rather than the absolute current issues. And to some extent, you sort of fall into the trap as well, because every time you do an interview, you always say, yes, but what department do you want to be in?
Well, I try and get them roughly the same questions, only because
and also, do you want to be chief minister? Actually,
who do they want as a chief minister?
It's a matter of, yes, but it's a matter of what's the fundamental driver that has them want to stand. And to my mind, the fundamental driver is they genuinely want to serve the people of the Isle of Man to the best of their ability. In totality, not necessarily being in a specific department. Because when that happens, and I could go on for hours about this, when that happens, it effectively mistrains new members to become mouthpieces for departments of government. That's not why they were put in. They were put in to represent the people who elected them as 24 people together.
Everyone would say that, surely. I mean, everyone would say, I'm doing this because I want to represent the people. What else would they say? Oh, I want it for my bank balance or something. No one's going to say that.
Yes, but the next step from that is, how do you ensure that the 24 truly do represent the people's will? And not necessarily through, back to your point, through party politics. And that means restructuring the way government works.
Right. Party politics...
Oh,
And this?
Party Politics won the 1992 Grand National. I don't know. Party Politics is a weird on the Isle, man, isn't it, realistically? I mean, Lib Vannon have a cagey record with Party Politics as well. There's no denying that. They have a cagey record of it. I mean, Oncom, we've had Zach Hall and Julie Edge, who left the party to varying degrees of success afterwards. You've got formerly Bill Malarkey, of course, was in Lib Vannon before.
For a while, yeah.
Before he then left and then was remained as an independent. So I think it's a party which, I don't know if it's to me there's an element of it being a brand more than it being a party. It's a collection of ideas over being an actual party with...
Well, and you have your own ideas on top of it, can't you?
What it is, it's a reaction to the genuine and real frustration that people have that their vote doesn't mean enough, that they don't quite know what it is that they're voting for. And that's what's got to change, not the inclusion of party politics. And as Sam says, look at the number of people who've stepped up to the plate in good faith within a party political setup, and then said, oh no, this doesn't work. Happened again and again. They do that because it doesn't work. And it will not work. And what we need to do, sorry, I'm on my soapbox now. We really need to get past that point, and it is possible to do it.
Okay. Madeleine Westall, I just interviewed actually today, probably my last one I've got in the can, doesn't drive. She's, it's getting hold of people like that. She's got such a big area up there. But again, it's transportation. Those are the big issues. Sustainable housing. How did you do when you saw her?
I thought she was very good. She was very good on local issues. She said about driving, she was very strong on obviously transport up there because as she says, she either cycles into Ramsey or gets a bus into Ramsey, or she cycles around the north of the island and relies on buses to get to work. And as we've seen up north, we've had buses have been cut, and that was clearly an issue which come across very well with people, and people could see that. And I think there's a very interesting thing I think she represented, which was working people in that constituency who they live there and they love work. They love living in the area, but they work in other parts of the island. And it's a constituency where, as you point out, if you don't drive, there isn't a support network behind you necessarily. In this instance, literally a bus network to allow you to do that. And I think there's that struck a chord with a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think you have no.
I can't comment because I wasn't there, and I'm not cognizant of her. Offer. Just before we do move on, it was the one. Really, there was several constituencies where the turnouts are very low for these meetings. This was in Derby Primary School. I've spent a lot of time in primary schools recently, and random evenings with bizarre drawings around the room. And this was one of the first ones that was in these, and it was really full. It was massively full, which was interesting because Derby, of course, had the biggest turnout in local authority elections. So there does seem to be more engagement up there than there perhaps is.
That's interesting because obviously there's lots of different events they're doing, aren't they? They're going constantly to one thing or another. But how many people?
I reckon you would have been upwards of 60 in that room, and this wasn't a big room that holds hundreds of people. It was a standing room at the back, which was good to see in any room.
Okay, well that completes that section.